can't believe he's finally here on my set at the same time as me. Talking about Brian Lilley, host of Byline on Sun News Network. Thanks.
It's a pleasure to be here when you're here. Normally I come in after you leave, I clean up, I put away the chairs. Sometimes I see if you've left the air conditioning running for me, you know, things like that. It's good to see you in person.
Listen, I love talking about things with you because you got such a fresh perspective. I want to talk about the Battle of Alberta. Two of my favorite Albertans, Chief Justice Beverly McLachlin and Senior Cabinet Minister Jason Kenney, have sort of been duking it out a little bit in the court of public opinion. Let me read a quote. Here's Justice Beverly McLachlin. She's the big boss of our Supreme Court. Now let me read to you from what she said at the Canadian Bar Association. She said, "We were very, very gratified to see your president of the Bar Association writing a powerful public letter to the minister in question, Jason Kenney, reminding the minister of the importance of public confidence in an impartial judiciary that bases its decisions on the law and not on government policy." Now, McLachlin was firing back at Jason Kenney, who had said, whoa, the judges are so off base that they are basically taking the side of the criminal and they are thwarting the government's agenda. What do you make of this fight?
Before I get into some real concrete examples of problems where the judiciary is getting in the way of deporting people that should be deported, let me read to you another Beverly McLachlin quote, fresh off my BlackBerry.
Okay.
"There should be a generous right to engage in scrutiny and criticism of judicial decisions and judicial conduct." Beverly McLachlin, 1991.
Now, she was a judge back then, right? But just
Supreme
not the
Court
big boss.
judge, but not the big boss.
Yeah. So what's changed then? I mean, she was saying bring on the criticism.
Because she's getting the criticism now, not just from kooks in the media like you and I, but from Jason Kenney, who's a cabinet minister. Now, Kenney has an interesting job. He's not someone who appoints the judges, but on the federal court level, close to half of the decisions in most months seem to be about immigration.
Yeah.
You go onto the Federal Court of Canada website and you click through and so-and-so versus Citizenship and Immigration Canada, so-and-so versus, it's people appealing. They've been through the Immigration Refugee Board process. They've been denied entry for some reason. There are a lot of scammers and they're told no. And then they appeal their decision, and then they're told no, and then they appeal and they appeal and they appeal. We have people that we've been trying to kick out of the country for decades who are still here. There's a well-known case in Brantford. Guy shot up a plane in Greece, did time, got out because his buddies did another hijacking, ends up in Canada, but doesn't exactly tell the truth. He's still here. We can't get rid of him. There was a gentleman in Cambridge, Ontario, who did a violent robbery of a convenience store. He was told to get out of the country. He didn't get out. He eventually contracted a disease that he needs medication for.
Oh, we'd better give that to him for free before we kick him out.
Well, now he says we can't kick him out because he'll have difficulty. Not that he could never get this this stuff in Vietnam, but he would have greater difficulty getting it. And so we've got to keep him. But the ultimate is the one that's just come out from the Winnipeg Sun. This guy was sentenced to 2 years. He was sentenced to time in a federal penitentiary. That makes him ineligible to apply for citizenship, and he's been told, get out. You're a serial criminal.
Yeah.
We sent you to jail for a whole list of stuff. You get out, you commit more crime. He appeals. The judge says, we're going to retroactively reduce your sentence. He's already served the time. The judge retroactively reduces his sentence to 2 years less a day so that he can appeal his deportation order.
That is outrageous. That is not being a judge. That is being a politician wearing robes. And the benefit is you don't have to face an electorate. You don't have to face question period. Most people won't even question because you're a judge.
That judge should do what John Riley did in Alberta and say, I've done as much as I can from the bench. Here's my gavel. I'm running in the next election. But they should not be doing that from the bench. That goes beyond interpreting laws. That goes beyond the old common law. People say, oh, judges shouldn't make law. In common law, to a degree, they always did. That is making law out of whole cloth and saying, forget anything that's written down. We're going to come up with our own ideas, with our own rules to help this guy who is a serial criminal that the government has decided we don't want in.
Brian, let me tell you this. Especially since the Charter of Rights came in 1982, judges have been political. The only question is, will they be politically accountable. And you can't have it both ways. You know, when the judges strike down laws, they like to use the phrase dialogue. We're having a dialogue with the legislators. And I sort of get it, because if legislators come up with an idea like banning free speech, I want the courts to say that's illegal. But I think that far too often our courts don't defend freedom, they write laws, and I think legislatures have to poke back. But look, when Jason Kenney pokes back in the gentlest way, in the most thoughtful way, pointing out cases like you did, well, look at this. The Bar Association slaps him down, Beverly McLachlin slaps him down.
Look, our lawyers are an advocacy group. The Bar Association is a political advocacy
It's a lobby
association.
group. It's a lobby group.
Yeah. Just to backhand our politicians for a moment, they often lack the guts to deal with contentious issues, and they say, well, it's before the courts.
Yeah.
We can't touch it, it's before the courts. Dalton McGuinty's done this in Ontario, kind of, saying we've appointed someone to do a review of the Human Rights Code and legislation.
Yeah, just so he doesn't have
before the election.
Yeah.
The person reports back after the election.
Yeah, isn't that
Paul
handy?
Martin did that with 3 issues, same-sex marriage, marijuana, and I forget the third, in the 2004 election. Politicians of all stripes do this, and they have to stop.
Yeah.
But the judges are continually going out and being political. If you don't think the Supreme Court is political, then you are blind or willfully ignorant. I've covered Supreme Court decisions for years. There was a decision, the Lilley decision, to open up private medicine in Quebec. It should have applied across the country. It didn't. But they also worked themselves into pretzels to try and make sure that it only fit a certain way. And when it's Quebec language cases, they do that. And there are certain things that you say, by their own logic, it should be struck down, but if it's too political, they won't.
You know, Brian, someone who is a political person their whole life, as a lawyer, as a political fundraiser, suddenly, poof, when they're put on the bench as a judge, they don't lose their political DNA. They just gain a whole new level of bulletproofness that they don't have to talk about. And I like the fact that Jason Kenney is poking at the lawyers, and I hope he continues to do so. We're out of time, Brian. Give me a quick sneak peek. What's coming today on your show?
Oh, entitlement culture, entitlement culture, entitlement culture.
I got to work. Entitlemania. You can borrow it, or if you like it.
I'm entitled to my entitlements.